Thank you for attending the public involvement meeting for the WIS 35 corridor study. This is the first of two public involvement meetings that will be held for this study. The purpose of this meeting is to provide details about the study, present the study purpose and need, present the preliminary alternatives under consideration, and gain feedback from the public. After you watch this presentation, we encourage you to view the study exhibits prepared for this meeting and fill out your comment sheet with any comments you'd like to share. WIS representatives will be available to answer any questions you may have. This study is part of the larger Wisconsin DOT La Crosse Major Study, which is evaluating major north-south routes in the La Crosse area as shown in the map. Each corridor, including WIS 35 shown in yellow, US 53 and US 1461 shown in blue on the map, and WIS 16 shown in green and purple, will be evaluated as separate studies. The focus of today's meeting is on the WIS 35 corridor. If you are interested in being involved in the planning efforts for other corridors, public involvement opportunities will be coming later in 2024 and 2025. The limits of the WIS 35 corridor are from US 1461 or South Avenue in the south to US 53 or Rose Street in the north, a length of approximately 4.8 miles. The scope of this study is to identify alternatives that improve safety, traffic operations, and multimodal facilities while addressing pavement and bridge infrastructure needs. WIS 35 has several names within the corridor limits, including West Avenue, Lang Drive, and George Street. For the purpose of this study, we will refer to the entire study corridor as WIS 35. A key component of a WIS corridor study is a purpose and need statement that identifies the objectives of the improvement project. This statement is not finalized until the completion of the study and can change as feedback is received or new information becomes available. For this study, the draft statement is: the purpose of the WIS 35 study is to develop alternatives that improve safety, address safety-related traffic operations concerns where practicable, and address existing and projected infrastructure needs through the design year 2050. Next, we'll review the identified needs for the study. Improving safety is a primary purpose of the study. Safety screening is used to identify roadway segments and intersections where crash frequency is significantly higher than expected given the characteristics of the location. These identified locations are called safety sites of promise, or locations where safety concerns have been identified. Over the last several 5-year screening periods, as much as 75% of the WIS 35 corridor and at least 10 intersections were flagged as a safety site of promise. A review of the crash history since 2015 indicates that there have been fluctuations in the annual number of crashes. Most notably, there was a dip in crash frequency in 2020 and 2021, likely due to changes in travel patterns caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite these fluctuations, the proportion of crashes happening at intersections has not significantly changed, with 56 to 59% of all crashes occurring at intersections. When we look closer at the type of crashes occurring at intersections, we see the proportions also remain steady, with the greatest proportion being rear-end crashes, followed by angle crashes and left-turn crashes. The WIS 35 corridor passes through several areas of the city with high bicycle and pedestrian demand. The number and location of crashes that involve the bicyclist or pedestrian are in the exhibit to the right. These numbers include both contact and non-contact bicyclist and pedestrian crashes. A contact crash is where a bicyclist or pedestrian was hit in the crash, and a non-contact crash is where a bicyclist or pedestrian was present but not impacted. This exhibit also shows the level of traffic stress of the crossings at these locations. Level of traffic stress is a quantitative measure indicating risk and comfort level of a crossing for a pedestrian or bicyclist based on traffic volumes, vehicle speeds, number of lanes, and the configuration of the crossing. While bicycle and pedestrian crashes occurred throughout the WIS 35 corridor, the largest concentration of crashes were located near the UW-La Crosse campus. Infrastructure needs for the WIS 35 corridor were also evaluated, including pavement needs and bridge needs. Pavement replacement schedules indicate approximately 60% of the corridor will be in need of pavement replacement prior to the 2050 design year. In addition, 2 bridges are located within the corridor limits, one that crosses the La Crosse River and one that crosses a railroad. Both bridges will need minor repairs, including a concrete deck overlay, prior to 2050. Multimodal facilities were also evaluated to assess non-vehicular modes of travel along the WIS 35 corridor. As previously mentioned, pedestrian crossings were evaluated using the level of traffic stress measure. Existing bicycle facilities were evaluated for connectivity along and adjacent to WIS 35. Lastly, transit stops along or adjacent to the corridor were evaluated for the presence of amenities such as an accessible landing at a stop. We encourage you to review the more detailed information on the multimodal facilities exhibits. A traffic operations analysis completed for the study found no delay deficiencies and modest traffic backups at intersections. These traffic backup concerns will be addressed where practicable. While traffic operation needs are relatively minor, we will need to take into account WIS 35's role as an alternate route. Other corridors adjacent to WIS 35 are anticipated to be under construction in future years as part of the major study. Traffic is expected to divert to WIS 35 from WIS 16 and from US 53 and US 1461, while those corridors are under construction in the future. Intersection locations where an increase of traffic onto WIS 35 is expected is shown on this map and will be considered as part of the study. Now we would like to share some of the preliminary alternatives we've developed to address these needs. Please keep in mind these are still preliminary concepts and we would appreciate your input as we refine them. WISDOT has developed several exhibits that show potential changes to the roadway typical section. A typical section is a street configuration that remains consistent for a specific roadway segment. A typical section is focused on the width of roadway elements, including travel lanes, turn lanes, parking lanes, bicycle facilities, medians, terraces, and sidewalks. Capacity expansion or adding travel lanes is not planned as part of the WIS 35 corridor study. An example typical section concept on the south end of the corridor is shown here that reconfigures the existing 4-lane undivided roadway into a 2-lane roadway with a 2-way left turn lane and on-street bike lanes. We invite you to review the exhibits for typical section alternatives proposed along the entire corridor. Please take some time to review these typical section alternatives and provide your feedback and ideas. In addition to typical section concepts, WISDOT is also identifying spot improvements to be considered along the corridor. These include potential improvements at intersections and for bicyclists and pedestrians, and additional details can be found on the spot improvement exhibits. This slide shows information on potential improvements at signalized intersections. For example, there are many locations where WISDOT will look at improving sight distance for vehicles turning left onto a side street from WIS 35. The existing geometry can make it difficult to see around vehicles turning left from the opposite direction. An improved layout is shown in the graphic on the left of the slide. Please take some time to review these spot improvement exhibits and provide your comments. Thank you for your interest in the WIS 35 corridor study. To close out this presentation, we would like to discuss schedule and next steps. With the completion of the first round of public involvement, WISDOT's next step will be to refine the list of preliminary alternatives and evaluate them. This will include developing detailed alternative exhibits that will allow us to identify impacts. Following a meeting with local officials and technical staff to present these detailed alternatives, a recommended alternative will be selected. WISDOT will host a second round of public involvement meetings in late 2024 to present detailed alternatives and the recommended alternative. The study is anticipated to wrap up in early 2025 with the completion of an environmental document. The late 2020s is the earliest anticipated construction timeframe. Construction for the corridor is not yet scheduled and is pending approval for construction funds. Thank you again for taking time to view this presentation. We encourage you to fill out your comment forms and return them to WISDOT. Comment forms can be left with us today, mailed at a later date, or emailed to the WISDOT staff listed in the study handout.